Hello, my name is Craig Hoyle of Astrology by Craig. I'm a Year 4 student with the Asheville Vedic Astrology Apprenticeship program, and this is my video presentation on the yogas and astrology. Now, yogas is a Sanskrit word that means yoke or union. And most people associate the word yoga with a group of physical techniques and spiritual practices that have the aim of yoking or uniting one's mind, body, and spirit to the divine. In astrology, yogas are planetary combinations that yoke or unite a person with the events of a particular life experience, or in other words, with a fate or a karma. They are combinations of planets that, through their union, bring about events in a person's life that they are meant to experience, for good or for ill. To what extent a yoga will be prominent in a person's life depends on the strength and capacity of the planets that are uniting and bringing that yoga into fruition. The best way to judge how a planet is going to produce a yoga is by looking at four important factors: a planet's role as a house lord and Karaka, its natural relationship to other planets, the inherent auspicious or inauspicious nature of the houses that planet rules, and a planet's overall yoga judgment score. Now, this last one, the yoga judgment score, is a set of quantifying calculations that is found in Brihat Shastra, the primary text on Vedic astrology. When all these factors are combined, they allow an astrologer to judge a planet and see to what extent it will bring about the event outlined in the yoga that is embedded in the birth chart. Studying yogas is important because yogas are the fruit of a person's life experience. At the moment of birth, these yogas were set in a person's life path through the placement of planets in houses. Some of these yogas bear their fruit as qualities and characteristics of a person's life. Others bear their fruit during a time period when the planets involved in creating them are awakened and begin to bring the effects of the yogas that they create into a person's life. Some fruits are good, others are bad. Most are a mixture of good and bad. The job of an astrologer is to analyze the planets and the yogas that they are creating and determine the ratio of good and bad that they have the potential to give, providing insights to the client into what kind of fate the universe has in store for them as they travel down the road of life. The astrologer B.V. Raman published a book entitled 300 Important Combinations. This is a pretty well-known book on yogas, and it highlights the amount of yogas that are out there for one to learn. It has been the practice of most astrologers in the past to memorize these important and more common yogas as a part of their practice. Some yogas have names like the Gajakesari Yoga and the Lakshmi Yoga that, along with those names, come with a brief description of their effects. But there are also a lot of other yogas that don't have names, such as Bhava yogas, that also have descriptions about their effects. And Bhava yogas are simple yogas where a planet, which is a lord of one house, is placed in another house. Now, whether yoga has a name or not, it is important for an astrologer to know how to judge that yoga, as that will reveal how prominent that yoga is going to be in a person's life. To best judge a yoga, it is important to be able to evaluate the components that make up the yoga. If you know these components and how to evaluate them, memorizing the endless list of yogas won't become necessary. You can just look at these components that create the yoga and get a pretty good idea of whether or not that yoga is going to play a major role in a person's life or not. So let's go over all the different components that create yoga and also go over how to evaluate them. We start our exploration of the yogas with the ascendant. The ascendant degree is the most important degree point in a birth chart. Everything in the chart is built off the ascendant degree. It is the thing that ties the planets and houses together, forming the yogas that unite a person to their fate. The ascendant degree is the point of entrance for you in this life. It is the moment everything in your chart becomes set. Imagine if at the moment of your birth, a person was able to take a photograph of the sky directly above you. This is what the birth chart is, essentially. It is a snapshot of where everything was at in the sky at the moment that you were born. All the planets and their location in signs and houses become fixed at that singular point where you were born, anchored in the ascendant degree. All the planets and their location in signs and houses become fixed at that singular point where you were born, anchored by the ascendant degree. From that point of entry, the planets begin their lifelong journey of progressing and regressing through your birth chart, triggering the embedded fate potentials that lie within your chart as they aspect or join with certain sensitive points or other planets in your chart at specific moments in your life, bringing to fruition the viable karmas in the course of time. Now, yogas are formed from two components, planets and houses. The Sanskrit name for house is Bhava, and Bhava means a state of existence. A house in astrology is an area where a facet of life resides. All things represented by that house exist there. The fifth house is where one's children reside. The third house is where one's siblings reside. The ninth house is where one's marriage resides. The second house is where one's family and where one's values reside, and so on. There are 12 houses in astrology that cover every facet of a person's life experience. The capacity of a house to bring about the things that resides in it depends a lot on the well-being and capacity of that lord that rules the house to produce it. If the house lord is strong, then the areas of life that it rules will likewise be strong. If a house lord is weak and also being afflicted, it can cause loss of the house as well as the things that reside in it to manifest in a healthy way for the person. The other component for the creation of a yoga is the planets, or the Grahas. Planets are the conscious drivers of our life experience. Graha is a Sanskrit word that is used to describe the planets, and Graha means to seize. This means that planets seize our consciousness. They grab a hold of our consciousness and direct it towards those things that the planet rules and represents in a person's chart. In Vedic astrology, there are 7 embodied planets, and they are the Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. It is important to note that Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto are not considered in Vedic astrology, traditionally, although some modern Vedic astrologers do incorporate them in their assessments. The lunar nodes of Rahu and Ketu are also considered planets, bringing the total to 9. Rahu and Ketu are considered disembodied planets or shadow planets. This is because Rahu and Ketu aren't physical planets. They are mathematical points in space where eclipses occur. Because they have no physical body, Rahu and Ketu don't rule any houses or any areas of life. And they aren't karakas of anything concrete. But they can still grab a hold of our consciousness and direct it towards things that they are indicating in the person's chart. This is because Rahu and Ketu work through the planets that rule the houses that they reside in, and take on the quality and nature of that planet, magnifying the effects of that planet, albeit in a shadowy way, obscuring things and making them confusing. When we think of yogas, we should think of them in relation to the houses and house lords, because it is the state of a house and its lord that determines the strength and auspiciousness of a yoga. We evaluate a house and its lord to see the overall state of that area of a person's life, to see if it is progressing or regressing. If it is progressing, then that area of life will produce good fruit in a person's life. If it is regressing, that area of life will be difficult and negatively impact a person's life experience. All planets are lord of houses, and their lordship is determined by the positions of the signs they rule from the ascendant. We have Venus in Capricorn. For a Libra ascendant, Venus rules the 1st and 8th houses, meaning Venus is going to have agendas for the 1st house of the body and one's sense of self. It will also have agendas for the 8th house of sexual and emotional intimacy. For an Aquarius ascendant, Venus rules the 4th and 9th houses, meaning it will have agendas for comfort, vehicle, property, marriage, and higher education. In both cases, Venus will make its agendas a priority, as it wants to have the houses that it rules prosper. This is true for all of the planets. What those house agendas are for the planet changes from ascendant to ascendant. That makes each planet a temporal lord of a house. It temporarily rules those specific houses for the duration of the person's life. The areas of a house that a planet rules must be considered in the context of the natural qualities a planet has and its nature and role as a karaka or producer. Planets are key to yogas. They are the producers of everything that is our life experience. We have signs which are the fields of potential for the zodiac. We also have houses that are temporal structures built on the foundation of sign potentials that set the path of a person's life experience. But it is the planets that activate both the signs and the houses, giving them a consciousness that energizes them and makes them active facets of a person's life experience. This is why what a planet is as a producer or a karaka in the chart is so important for assessing things like yogas. What a planet is a karaka of in a chart tells us what its agendas are for that person's life experience. It tells you what things that planet is going to put its consciousness towards and energize and bring to the path of a person's life. In addition to being lords of houses and the agendas for those houses, planets are also natural karakas or producers of both the concrete things that are a part of a person's life path, as well as aspects of the person's consciousness. A planet's role in being a natural karaka is inherent to its nature. This means that what a planet is a natural karaka of in a chart will apply to every chart, no matter what. For instance, Venus is a natural karaka for marriage in every chart. So the placement of Venus in every chart gives indications for producing marriage in a person's life. Jupiter is a natural karaka for wealth and children. Therefore, you always want to look at Jupiter in a chart for exploring indications for wealth and children. A planet's capacity for being a natural karaka for certain things in a person's life makes them important planets for certain houses it shares agendas with. For instance, the Sun is a natural karaka of the self. Therefore, Sun is an important planet for an astrologer to look at when looking at first house areas of life related to one's life path and the state of one's body in a person's chart. It is also important for looking at ninth house areas of life, as the ninth represents the principles one lives by and tries to uphold in life. Mars is a natural significator of siblings. If a client wants to know more about their siblings, in addition to looking at the third house and the third lord, you also want to look at Mars and see what's going on with it. A planet can also share its natural qualities as a karaka with a house that it has an affinity with. Saturn is a karaka of hard work, making it an important planet for the 10th house of career and achievement. One succeeds in one's career and gains status and achievement through determination and hard work. A study of the planets will reveal an endless list of things that they represent and are significators of, which makes sense if you really think that there are just 7 embodied planets that produce literally everything that is part of both our concrete and subjective life experience. In addition to being natural karakas, planets are also Chara karakas. Chara karakas is a principle from Jaimini astrology. And Chara karakas are different from natural karakas in that a planet's degree in the chart determines its role as a producer. The planet that is in the highest degree in a person's chart becomes the Atma karaka, the significator of the self. The planet that is in the next highest degree becomes the Amatya karaka, the significator of one's ministers or friends. The planet with the third highest degree becomes the Bratu karaka, the karaka of one's siblings. The planet with the fourth highest degree becomes the Matru karaka, the karaka for one's mother, and it also becomes the Putra karaka, the karaka of one's children. The planet in the fifth highest degree becomes the Pitru karaka, the karaka of one's father. The planet in the sixth highest degree becomes the Nati karaka, the karaka of one's relatives. And finally, we have the planet in the seventh highest degree, which becomes the Dara karaka, or the karaka of one's spouse. A planet in its role as a Chara karaka will bring its innate qualities to those things that it signifies. A person that has Saturn as their Atma karaka will have a quality to their personality that is practical and realistic, which are characteristics of Saturn. A person who has Saturn for their Dara karaka will have a spouse who embodies characteristics of Saturn. Like natural karakas, Chara karaka planets will strive to produce these things they are karakas of in a person's life. However, a Chara karaka planet is a temporary producer of those things. They fulfill that role only for the life of the person, making them temporal karakas. Because of this, Chara karaka planets are more unique and personal to the individual, and therefore should be looked at as primary factors as they represent the concrete thing that will be in a person's life. A person's Putra karaka will be the concrete child that they have in life. The Dara karaka will be the concrete person or the actual spouse. It is important to consider the role of a planet as a karaka because, in addition to its role as a house lord, what a planet is a significator of gives insights into what a planet is going to seek to achieve in the person's life. It will also tell you just what might be lost if a planet is being hurt by an enemy and can't fulfill the agendas that it is responsible for. Whether a planet is a house lord, natural Karaka, or Chara Karaka, its state and condition in a person's chart determines just how effectively it can produce those things that it rules and is a significator of. If a planet is weak due to poor placement and being afflicted by enemies, whatever that planet rules and is a significator of will be negatively impacted, which can result in the loss of those things during adverse time periods when the planet can't put strength behind those things it rules and has an agenda for. Planetary relationships is another important factor for studying yogas because the natural relationship of a planet to other planets is key for understanding how yogas work. Planets have friendships with other planets because they share natural qualities and tendencies that are compatible with each other. They often have similar agendas that make them work well together. Planets who are enemies to each other have differing qualities and tendencies that make them difficult or adversarial partners, making for competing agendas where an enemy planet can starve a weaker planet that it is in competition with. For instance, Sun and Saturn are natural enemies to one another. They have competing agendas. Sun is a planet of ideals, and it works to promote the agendas of its house through the sacrifice of other planets' agendas for the accomplishment of that ideal. Saturn is a planet of reality and pragmatism, so it works to promote the agendas of its house out of a very real fear of losing them and has little time for the agendas of other planets. Dashas and transits of Sun and Saturn can be very hurtful because Sun wants Saturn to sacrifice things it desperately wants to hold on to, while Saturn has little concern for anything the Sun wants to accomplish, which can result in some very painful sacrifices and losses for the person they are affecting. Jupiter is an enemy to no one, so Jupiter is going to help whatever planet it is impacting through a dasha or a transit, and will only help to manifest the houses that planets rule and is a karaka of, because Jupiter is a friend to everyone. It is important to understand the basic natural relationships planets have with each other, as that will give you a basic understanding of where a planet might be suffering from some difficulty or weakness coming from an enemy planet that can negatively impact the outcome of a yoga and limit it or prevent it from fulfilling the promise of bringing something good into a person's life. In Vedic astrology, some houses are auspicious or favorable, while other houses are inauspicious or unfavorable. This is based on the qualities of the area of life that the house deals with. Angular houses are houses of activity and work. They deal with what we seek to outwardly accomplish in the world. Planets in these houses have usually the most direct impact on our life because they are focused on the actions we perform as part of walking our path in life. Difficult houses are houses of struggle, setbacks, and delays. The work required for them involves growth and expansion. They are houses where planets improve their strength and influence over time, but that can come through a lot of hardship and struggle, which makes them difficult areas of life. Neutral houses can go either way. They can give as much good as they can bad. For instance, the 8th house is a house of death, and is also a house of inheritance. We can lose a relative tragically, yet they leave us a fortune in their will. The 12th is expenses. We can have good expenses, such as taking music lessons that make you feel good about yourself. We can also have bad expenses, a car that continually breaks down and drains our finances so that we can't afford a new one. If the lords of angular houses are malefic, they tend to be more auspicious than lords who are benefic, because malefic planets are natural problem solvers and hard workers. They roll up their sleeves and get to work, lending themselves better to angular houses. Benefics, on the other hand, bring joy and happiness, which doesn't lend itself readily to areas of life that require work and engagement in activity. Benefics lend themselves better to trinal houses, which are about fortune, reward, merit, and grace. Since a planet wants to promote the agendas of the houses that it rules, the auspicious or inauspicious qualities of those houses are an indication of whether or not the planet will be auspicious or inauspicious for a person's life path. For a Sagittarius ascendant, Saturn is an inauspicious planet because it rules the 2nd and 3rd, the 2nd being a neutral house and the 3rd being a difficult house. For a Taurus ascendant, Saturn is an auspicious planet because it rules the 9th and 10th houses, which are auspicious houses. Within these types of houses, certain houses will be stronger than others. This is important. For a Sagittarius ascendant, Mars rules the 5th and 12th houses. Because the 5th is a stronger auspicious house, it will be stronger than the 12th in its effects. so it has the potential to negate the negative qualities of the 12th, making Mars an auspicious planet for a Sagittarius ascendant. If you take the time to contemplate the nature of planets and the qualities of houses, you start to get an idea of which planets innately work better in certain houses and how certain houses work more for or against a person's life path based on the planets that are in them, giving you a basic understanding of just how planets and houses color the nature of a yoga towards positive or negative effects. Another aspect to the auspicious and inauspicious characteristics of the houses is the correlating principle of Bhavat Bhavam. Bhavat Bhavam means from house to house, and is a rule that states that a house that is the same number of houses away from its number designation will give the same effects as that primary house. For example, the second from the second house is the third house, so the third house will give the effects that are similar to the second house. The ninth from the ninth house is the fifth house, so the fifth will give effects similar to the ninth. Looking at Bhavat Bhavam houses adds another layer of data point for assessing a particular area of a person's life path. Another way we can get an idea of the character or nature of a yoga is by looking at the houses that form it in their capacity as either being a dharma, artha, kama, or moksha house. Now, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha are concepts found in yogic philosophy, and they are collectively called the Purusarthas, the four aims in life. Purusha means soul, and artha means for the purpose of. From this, we get that these four aims in life exist for the purpose of the soul. In other words, to help a person to live in harmony with their soul nature. Dharma is duty or purpose. Dharma gives a person a structure and order upon which to build things because there's an underlying inspiration behind it. When we have a structure and order to our lives, it gives us direction and purpose that inspires our actions in the world. The first house is the Dharma house. We are embodied beings with a name, a place of birth, a sense of self that defines us, and a path of life that we walk. The fifth house is a Dharma house. The fifth house is children and creativity. Children is the fruit of our creativity. They give us a purpose to live for. We structure our life around the inspiration of being a parent and raising our children. The ninth house is a Dharma house. The ninth is marriage, religion, and principles, all of which are institutions we seek to uphold. We impose limitations and structures to our life to uphold these ideals. Artha is prosperity, abundance, and success. Artha gives us the resources necessary to fulfill our purpose, enjoy life, and find freedom. The second house is an Artha house. In order to be prosperous in life, we need to be responsible in obtaining and managing our resources, particularly our finances. Our ability to be responsible and successfully take care of ourselves, as well as our families, increases our self-worth and our sense of security. The sixth is an Artha house. In order to be prosperous, we have to have a healthy capacity for work and for taking care of the day-to-day little things in life. Our health, our work environment, and the service we render to others are all important for a successful life. If we neglect such things, it can lead to debts, setbacks, and enemies becoming problems to our success. The 10th house is an Artha house. Having a career that we are successful in gives us status and a sense of achievement in the world. We gain power and influence by demonstrating our capacity for professional success, earning fame, honor, and respectability. Kama is our desire for pleasure. Kama fuels our behaviors towards a richer and more enjoyable life. It is the aim that continuously pulls us into ever new experiences. The third house is a Kama house. The third is hobbies, sports, interests, and talents. It is our friends and peers. We find enjoyment in our pastimes, hanging out with our friends, and bonding with our siblings. When we put our minds to the things we are interested in, we find enjoyment with the simple pleasure of the experience in having them. The seventh house is a Kama house. We desire for the enjoyment of relationships, whether out of a desire for intimacy or for companionship. We seek a richer life experience through having a long-term relationship with someone other than ourselves. The 11th is a Kama house. We seek enjoyment through social involvement and through the obtainment of our life goals. When we receive the goals of our aspirations, our life becomes more enjoyable and more fulfilling. While kama can be beneficial, it can also be detrimental when we place too much importance on seeking pleasure over purpose. Moksha is freedom and liberation. Moksha is often a term used to describe the ultimate freedom of liberation from the cycles of rebirth. But that is moksha in its most elevated form. We can also see moksha as the freedom that comes from letting go of the structure, responsibility, and the pull of our desires. It is escape from all the other aims in life that have the potential to bind us and bog us down. The fourth is a moksha house. The fourth is happiness, real estate, and one's home, mother, and emotional security. When we are happy, we are free. We have our own space we feel secure in. Like the comfort that comes from our mother, we can feel safe and free in our own emotional environment. The eighth is a moksha house. The eighth is sudden changes, death, occult understanding, chronic illness, and emotional security. Sometimes we find greater security through the lowering of our emotional defenses. Whether in an intimate relationship, a chronic illness, or in facing death, the resulting transformation opens us up to deeper aspects of understanding of our life experience. The 12th is a moksha house. The 12th is liberation, dreams, expenses, and travel to foreign lands. In our inner world, we are free. Our dreams and imagination take us away from the troubles of the world. It's fun to escape from the confining and limiting institutions that make up life and travel to foreign lands, whether physically or through fantasy. We just have to be careful not to escape too much. Otherwise, we might lose all we have worked for to the thieves and robbers of life who drain our expenses when we aren't paying attention. According to Vedic philosophy, tailoring our life towards the healthier aspects of these four aims in life decreases the amount of suffering we will experience as part of our life path. Likewise, an astrologer can look at these yogas and counsel a person towards a happier and less painful life experience. In Brihat Parahora Shastra, Parashara gives the formulas for judging a planet's potential to give the effects of its yoga. I'm not going to go into how to calculate this, as this is beyond the scope of this video, but I will briefly go over the principles behind it. On the right side is an image from Ernst Wilhelm's Kala software displaying the results of a yoga judgment score outlined by Parashara. Yoga judgment is determined by looking at three capacities every planet has. It's Ishta and Kashta, which is a planet's innate capacity, its innate talent and ability to do well. Shubha and Ashubha, which is the accumulated capacity to merit good outcomes from a planet. And Digbala, which is the capacity to direct the qualities of the planet towards a successful outcome. These capacities give us insights into a planet's potential to manifest a yoga. The results of calculations give the amount of positive and negative potential a planet has to produce a yoga in a person's life. These results are given in Kala with green for positive and red for negative. Notice that each planet has a share of both. So Ishta and Kashta is a measure of a planet's ability to do good. Now, by good, I mean the positive effects of its nature. A malefic planet can have positive effects. The positive side of Saturn can help a person to endure and persevere through challenges and difficulties. This is why Saturn is usually strong in the charts of spiritualized people who successfully dedicate their entire lives to spiritual practice. Ishta and Kashta are two halves of a planet's effects. Ishta is the amount of positive or desirable effects. Kashta is the amount of negative or undesirable effects. Ishta and Kashta is calculated by using two of the 6 strengths a planet has in Shadbala, Uchabala and Chestabala. Uchabala is the degree to which a planet is to its highest expression, which is exaltation. The closer a planet is to its exaltation point, the higher its Uchabala score is going to be. An exalted planet works at its fullest capacity for optimum expression. Chestabala is the emotional strength of a planet. The closer a planet is to the Earth, the brighter and stronger it will appear to us here on Earth. A retrograde planet will tend to be high in Chestabala because a retrograde planet usually is at its closest point to the Earth. Planets high in Chestabala have a greater capacity to share the qualities and behaviors that they have. Shubha and Ashubha is the auspicious or inauspicious score of a planet that is based on calculating the average dignities of a planet through the Rashi D1, which is the self or the Atman, the Hora D2, which is our individualized or subjective self, the Drekana D3, which is our siblings, the Saptamsha D7, which is our children, the Navamsha D9, which is our spouse, the Dwadashamsha D12, which is our parents, and the Trimsamsha D30, which is our capacity to live in a balanced and healthy way with the world around us, which includes our capacity to live with ourselves in a healthy way. The results are the measure of merit one has achieved through one's interactions with the living beings who are part of their life experience, including our relationship with ourselves. If we have worked at creating healthy and positive interactions with all the living beings that make up our life, we earn merit. If we have not done a good job with this, then we earn demerit around that planet. Digbala is the directional strength of a planet. Digbala tells us how capable a person is at directing the energies of that planet. The more we are able to direct the energies of a planet effectively in our lives, the greater success we can have with that planet. Planets become strong in Digbala the closer they get to specific house cusps. Now, a house cusp is the most sensitive degree point for a house. The closer a planet gets to its optimum degree point, the stronger it will be in directing its energies. The Sun and Mars get stronger in Digbala the closer they are to the 10th house cusp. Jupiter and Mercury get stronger in Digbala the closer they are to the 1st house cusp. Saturn gets stronger in Digbala the closer it is to the 7th house cusp. The Moon and Venus get stronger in Digbala the closer they are to the 4th house cusp. Having any planet strong in Digbala is going to help you quite a lot in life. It is said that if a person has 3 or more planets strong in Digbala, it makes them a king. This is because having 3 planets strong in Digbala means they can rely on those planets getting them to the right place at the right time in their life 3 out of 7 times, which is pretty good if you think about it, because you also have to think that they might also have 2 or 3 other planets that might be getting them to the right place at the right time about 50% of the time, on top of those 3 other planets, which is going to give them pretty good odds for success in life. Even though the calculations for each of these factors for a yoga judgment is different, they are scored similarly. The highest score for each is 60 points. Whatever a planet's score is from the calculation reveals the amount of good out of 60 point that planet has. The remainder then is the amount of bad the planet has. If a planet scores 45 points, then that means it has 45 points of good out of 60 that it can put towards a yoga. If the planet scores only 15 points of good, then it only has 15 out of 60 points that it can put towards a yoga. When these 3 scores are mathematically combined, they give the final yoga judgment score for the planet. The final positive score for a planet is indicated in the row labeled IXSXSD. The negative score for the planet is found in the row marked KXAXKD. This is the number that tells you ultimately what a planet's potential is for giving the positive and negative effects towards the yoga it is joined with. 3 is considered an average number for a total yoga judgment score, while 8 or above is considered fantastic. The higher a planet's positive score, the more its positive effects will be felt in a person's life. The higher a planet's negative score, the more its negative effects will be felt. Ishta, Shubha, and Digbala are instrumental for measuring the effects of a yoga, but they are also key data points that can be used to gain greater insights into the expression of a planet that is part of that yoga that is affecting a person's life, giving greater accuracy in predicting the degree of the effects that will be felt by the person in their life. Now let's take some of the principles I've outlined here into the analysis of the chart and life of Ram Dass. Ram Dass was a psychologist and spiritual teacher. Dass began his life as Richard Alpert. He taught psychology at Harvard University, where he became famous for the Harvard Psilocybin Project, a research project into the exploration of consciousness through the use of psychedelics, along with his fellow researcher Timothy Leary. The controversial nature of their research ultimately resulted in their removal from their respective positions in 1963. Afterward, Das continued to explore higher states of consciousness, focusing on spiritual and meditative practices over the use of psychedelics. This led him to India, where he met Neem Karoli Baba, a Hindu saint who would give him his name, Ram Dass. Albert wrote the extremely popular book Be Here Now, which presented his experiences and insights that he gained while he was in India. For the remainder of his life, Das created and worked in several humanitarian and service-related nonprofits that promoted spiritual well-being and education. He continued to write and conduct speaking tours, sharing his insights and experiences while developing a concept of what he called the loving awareness of the self as the soul. Ram Dass was a Cancer ascendant, uniting the first house of the body with the fourth sign of Cancer, which is our subjective experience. Cancer is about our feelings, memories, and the nurturing we received or didn't receive as a child. Therefore, Cancer deals a lot with one's family of origin. Cancer being the ascendant indicates that Dass's personality and self-projection were colored by these qualities of Cancer. The first yoga that we're going to look at in Ram Dass's chart is a Bhava yoga, or a house yoga. It is a simple planetary combination that is formed by having a house lord placed in a house. There are 144 Bhava yogas in Vedic astrology. Bhava yogas unite the house the Lord rules with the house it resides in. In The Art and Science of Vedic Astrology, Volume 2, the authors Fish and Kurzak outline the effects of all 144 Bhava yogas, so it's a very handy resource for exploring these yogas and determining their effects. In this case, we have the Lord of the First residing in the sixth. This unites the first and sixth houses together, the effect of which depends on the strength and capacity of the first Lord, Moon. Moon has a significantly negative yoga judgment score of plus 2.4 to minus 7.7. This means that this Bhava yoga that is being formed is going to lean more towards the negative. This is going to create an emotional imbalance to Sagittarius, the sign of ideals and fairness, which will play out as one encounters enemies, setbacks, and delays that are so much a part of the sixth house, and reinforce the pull towards inner fulfillment in service over material accomplishment, because the moon is a waning moon, which tends to make one's outer material world decrease so that one can increase their inner emotional nature. Now let's look at Ram Dass's chart in the context of the Purusartha houses to see what aims in life will be predominant. For this, we're going to incorporate the auspiciousness and strength of the houses to get a sense of which aims in life will be the strongest for him. Jupiter and Mars are auspicious planets for a Cancer ascendant. This is because Jupiter rules the most important trinal house, the ninth, and Mars rules the second strongest trinal house, which is the fifth, as well as the 10th house, which is the strongest angle house. Jupiter is in the first house, which is the Dharma house. Now, I should mention that the first house is considered both an angle and a trinal house, and is generally considered to be an auspicious house under any circumstances. So we have the Lord of the strongest of the Dharma houses going into another Dharma house, the first, where it is exalted. So this tells us that Dharma is going to be a very important quality to the path of this person's life. Qualities such as purpose, grace, and following one's inspiration will be important aims for the life path of the individual. Now, Jupiter also rules the sixth house. The sixth is the middle strongest of the difficult houses. It is related to work and service. The sixth house is also an Artha house of overcoming difficulties and obstacles in a responsible way. So there will be some difficulties, obstacles, and setbacks that will be a part of the life path of this individual. Fortunately, the Lord of the sixth is an exalted Jupiter, and Jupiter has the qualities of optimism, and it gives the ability to see the bigger picture of life. So Jupiter is going to bring the aim of meeting the obstacles and difficulties of life with a grace, a faith, and a compassion that comes through living our spiritual principles. Mars is in the second house. The second house is a neutral house, and it's also an Artha house. The second is our values and our sense of responsibility. Its Lord, the Sun, is in the 10th house, which is the strongest of the angular and Artha houses. The 10th is related to our activities in the world that we undertake to make an impact, such as with our career. So we have a strong focus on implementing those things we feel a sense of duty or purpose around in a responsible way through our activities in the world that is also connected strongly to the aims of the individual because we have two very strong Artha houses uniting here. Added to this is the fifth house. The fifth house is creativity, or how we use our creative intelligence through trusting in ourselves. The fifth house is also the residence of our karmic rewards that we have stored up from previous life experiences. It is a repository of our collected merit. So, added to the strong aim of expressing our principles and values through our activities and actions in the world is a sense of destiny, integrity, and a capacity for charity and good deeds. From this, we can conclude that while Mars is an auspicious planet for a Cancer ascendant, it isn't placed ideally for a strong Digbala. Sun is ideally placed for Digbala, but it rules a neutral house. Therefore, the most prominent aim in life is Jupiter. It is in the first house, its ideal location for Digbala. It is also exalted in the first, which is going to allow it to operate at its fullest potential. And Jupiter rules the strongest and most auspicious of the trinal houses, the ninth house. Therefore, the Dharma and Artha yogas associated with Jupiter as ruler of both the ninth and sixth houses are going to be the most prominent for this chart, indicating that this person's path will be characterized in great part by ninth house qualities of an attraction to deeper understanding and higher education. Themes of grace, good fortune, charity, and faith will also be prominent, as well as travel and one's guru. There will also be a focus on sixth house themes of service, duty, health, and healing that will be part of this individual's life path. Applying the Purusartha yogas is a great tool for getting an overall sense of the aims a person has in their life, making it a great starting point for an astrological assessment. Let's take a moment to look at two planets in Dasa's chart and see their capacity to bring about an event indicated by a yoga. Sun is exalted, and Sun rules the second house, which is a neutral house. So this means that Sun is going to be a neutral planet for a Cancer ascendant. However, in Dasa's case, the Sun is in a very auspicious placement in the 10th house, and every planet does well in the 10th house, so it's going to make Sun an auspicious planet for Das. Sun's yoga judgment score is an overwhelmingly positive plus 19.3, and this tells us that only good will come from the Bhava yogas of having the second lord going into the 10th house. It's going to bring respect in one's vocation. It will also make one highly educated and excellent at public speaking. Through initiative and ambition, Sun placed in Aries will bring consistency and authority to Leo, blending together nicely one's 10th house aspirations and one's actions into the second house of values and self-worth. Jupiter is exalted. It is in the first house, and it rules the 6th and 9th houses. The 6th is a difficult house, but Jupiter also rules the very important 9th house, which is the strongest trinal house. And this is going to more than make up for the inauspicious nature of the 6th house, indicating Jupiter will be an auspicious planet for a Cancer ascendant. Jupiter's yoga judgment score is an exceptionally positive plus 23.1. So even a small influence from Jupiter can have a significant impact. This tells us that the Bhava yogas of the ruler of the 6th and 9th going into the 1st are going to be overwhelmingly positive, giving Das the capacity to overcome obstacles, and this will give one a greater sense of purpose and optimism around his sense of self and his emotional availability that is going to help him to weather the obstacles and delays that life brings him. Because we've already found indications from the Purusartha yogas that Jupiter is going to be an important planet for Das, let's explore Jupiter further by looking at a particular yoga it is forming due to its placement in his chart. Jupiter is in the first house. It is creating a Subha yoga or auspicious yoga. Subha means auspicious. This planetary combination of having a benefic in the lagna or the ascendant indicates how you don't always need some elaborate combination to make a great yoga. According to Brihat Parahara Shastra, the effects of this yoga are: one will be eloquent, charming, handsome, amiable, worthy, and virtuous. Here we have Jupiter, the greatest of the benefic planets, positioned in the first house, giving its qualities of grace, joy, optimism, and good fortune to the body and personality of the person, bestowing its gifts of wisdom and intelligence to the person from the moment they were born and remaining with them throughout the course of their life. Jupiter's placement in the first is going to make a person wise, cheerful, generous, educated, wealthy, and conversant in all forms of knowledge. It will also create opportunities and lucky breaks that are going to reinforce the principles that they put their faith in and live by. Jupiter will bring happiness, opportunities, obtainment of knowledge, and a philosophical nature to the first. But this is just Jupiter naturally manifesting those things to the house that it is placed in, which it will naturally give to the first house. Add to this is Jupiter being in the sign of its exaltation, its strong Digbala score, due to it being placed in the first house, its auspicious rulership over the strongest of the trinal houses, and its overwhelmingly positive yoga judgment score. And now we have an incredibly strong potential for Jupiter through this Shubha yoga to boost other yogas it is forming in this chart. We are beginning to see that when we start to bring these components together, just how they naturally give us insights into not only what makes a yoga, but also what a yoga needs to make it a prominent event in a person's life experience. Now that we have looked at Jupiter and the Sun, let's take a look at some yogas they are forming in Ram Dass's chart. The next yoga we're going to look at is a Parivartana yoga, or a yoga of mutual exchange. This yoga binds the two houses together tightly. It has an influence that is similar to a Rashi aspect. Moon and Jupiter are in a yoga of mutual exchange between the first and sixth houses, tying together tightly these two houses and their agendas. Moon is a natural friend to Jupiter, and while Jupiter is a natural neutral to the Moon. But Jupiter is also naturally friendly to everyone. So Jupiter will naturally seek to help manifest Moon's agendas as part of its inherent generous nature. Unfortunately, the sixth house is the Dustana house, or house of suffering. So this will lessen the positive value and benefit of this yoga, as there will be a level of suffering associated with it. However, we can't discount Jupiter's exalted capacity to more than make up for the suffering that might result from this mutual exchange. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so Jupiter will help lift up the Moon by framing things in a broader perspective that will carry Das throughout his life of service and work with greater optimism and purpose. Now, another aspect to this is because we are seeing both a Parivartana yoga between Moon and Jupiter, as well as a Bhava yoga between the first lord going in the sixth and the sixth lord going in the first, there's going to be a strong focus on Das's life path towards service, which is a sixth house theme. In fact, Das's guru, Neem Karoli Baba, gave him the name Ram Dass, which means servant of God. He also instructed Das to always love everyone, serve everyone, and remember God. Here we see in this chart that service was at the core of his life path and was being shaped by these important yogas in his chart. Here is another yoga in Das's chart. This one is called a Trilocana, or three-eyed yoga, and it is formed when the Sun, Moon, and Mars are all in trines to each other. This yoga unifies the self, or the Sun, with the mind, or the Moon, and the mental concepts, or Mars, in mutual harmony. Now, Sun, Moon, and Mars all have friendly relationships with each other naturally, except for Mars, who is a natural neutral to the Moon. But this is still positive because the Moon has no natural enemies, and a planet that is neutral isn't going to get in the way of the other planets' agendas. This yoga is highly favorable as it brings harmony to one's life, bestowing high intelligence, great wealth, and long life to the recipient. Having Sun and Mars already in a Parivartana yoga with one another is going to strengthen this yoga and reinforce it. Sun rules the second of values and speech. Mars rules the fifth of trusting in oneself, mental intelligence, and the logical mind, and the 10th of personal ambitions and achievement. Moon rules the first of the body and one's sense of self. Because this yoga ties together the lords of these houses, it ties these houses together as well. This means that there is going to be good fortune and an auspicious quality to these houses. Career, status, responsibilities, resources, and the path of one's life will all have a quality of grace, good fortune, and luck associated with them, making for a charmed life in regard to these houses. Das grew up in great wealth and never suffered from a lack of resources throughout his life. When he was fired from Harvard in the fallout of the Harvard psilocybin project, a normally career-ending event actually resulted in him gaining greater fame and status as a counterculture personality. He would go on to establish himself as a public speaker and writer, creating new ways of presenting psychological and spiritual concepts to his audience. It is this exalted sun that powers both this yoga and the other Parivartana yoga that is being formed between it and Mars, strengthening each with vitality and consistency. Now, the presence of Rahu with the sun is of concern, as its presence reveals inherent karmic weaknesses that will bring confusion and uncertainty. Rahu likes to throw a curveball into our lives. Added to this is the Rashi aspect coming from Mars. This can make that curveball very abrupt and damaging because when these planets are being activated at the same time, it can lead to violent or harmful events. But the strength of the sun should be able to keep Das consistently on his path and be able to manage intelligently whatever life throws at him. An interesting aspect of Ram Dass's life is that he suffered a stroke in 1997. The stroke left him crippled and paralyzed on the right side, afflicting his mobility. He also had expressive aphasia from the stroke, which hampered his ability as a public speaker. But that didn't stop him from continuing to make public appearances and making pilgrimages, such as one he made to India in 2004. A second stroke in the wake of that pilgrimage left him unable to travel for the rest of his life, stranding him on Maui. Despite this, he continued to be a public speaker both online and to people willing to travel to Maui to hear him talk. The second house is speech, and the 10th house is activity in the world. Even though the stroke affected both these houses, Das's sun was able to maintain some consistency with both of these houses and keep him active in the world. Now, Moon is the weakest planet in this yoga. Moon has a significantly negative yoga judgment score, but as I covered earlier, we have Jupiter helping to strengthen the Moon and lift up its corner of this yoga. Yogas in Vedic astrology is a rich study that I encourage anyone who is interested in astrology explore more deeply. They reveal the features and form inherent within the chart that gives insights into the quality and direction of a person's life path based on the strength and capacity of the planetary combinations that are found within it. This concludes my presentation on the yogas in Vedic astrology. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope that this presentation inspires you to explore not just the yogas, but other facets of Vedic astrology as well. If you want to know more about the chart and life of Ram Dass, you can go to my website, astrologybycraig.com, and you will find my 10,000-word chart assessment of Ram Dass posted there for you to read. To schedule an appointment for an astrological reading, you can reach out to me at craig@astrologybycraig.com. Thank you once again for watching, and have a great day.